Hey, lovely folks. It is good to see you today. So I have affectionately deemed you all the Come Alive Collective. So it's great to have y'all in the building today. So I wanted to talk to you about the first few steps of healing. And I was reading some verses this morning, and the steps kind of popped out at me. And I was like, whoa, I got to share that with folks because it's certainly true. It's certainly true whether we're thinking about this from a purely Christian perspective, from a purely psychological perspective, or the integration of both. These steps are true. So if you have your Bible, feel free to grab yours. I'm going to be reading from mine. It's the Message version. So if it sounds a little bit different than what you're used to, that is why. But I'm going to be taking a look at John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9, and then verse 14. So that's what I'm going to be reading from. So it says, soon another feast came around and Jesus was back in Jerusalem. Near the sheep gate in Jerusalem was a pool, in Hebrew called Bethesda, with 5 alcoves. Hundreds of sick people, blind, crippled, paralyzed, were all in the alcoves. One man had been an invalid there for 38 years. When Jesus saw him stretched out by the pool and knew how long he had been there, he said, "Do you want to get well?" Pay attention, we're going to come back to that one. The sick man said, "Sir, when the water is stirred, I don't have anyone to put me in the pool. By the time I get there, somebody else is already in." Jesus said, "Get up, take your bedroll, start walking." We're going to come back to that too. The man was healed on the spot. He picked up his bedroll and walked off. And then verse 14 says, a little later, Jesus found him in the pool and said, found him in the temple, my apologies, and said, "You look wonderful. You're well. Don't return to a sinning life or something worse might happen." Okay, so these verses I absolutely love. It's a rich verse. People are able to pull all sorts of things from these verses and be kind of inspired by the Holy Spirit to interpret them lots of different ways. When I read these verses this morning, what jumped out at me was the initial steps to the healing process. And so the first step that I pulled from this is to simply believe. So you can see in these scriptures that when Jesus was talking to the man didn't say, well, wait, okay, let me explain this to you. So it's been 38 years, so I don't know. I'm sure my muscles are probably kind of atrophied. If you're going to heal me, it's probably going to be a process. It's going to take a little while. And, I'm not sure, what are your credentials again? Because, I don't know. There's no muscle here. There's just all, no, he didn't do any of that. He was like, "What'd you say?" You said, "Get up." I'm up. Okay, let's go. Let's do this. So he simply believed. And when we're thinking about our own recovery, the first step that we need is to simply believe, right? Believe that life can be different. Believe that it can be better in some ways, that you can be healed of these things, restored, recovered, renewed. So often we're struggling with some stuff, whether it be, anxiety or depression, or a child that, maybe feels lost, or a substance abuse problem that's gone on for years and years, or childhood abuse that seems like it's still unhealed in you, or whatever the case may be. But we've gone through things for so long that it can start to feel like, you know what? I don't know that this can get better, right? I don't know that it'll be different. These things haven't been taken away from me yet. This pain hasn't been taken away from me yet. Jesus and God, they're able to do all these things, but I don't see where they've done anything magnificent in my life yet. And so one of the first things we have to do is to simply believe that God does see you. He does care about you. He is invested in your healing journey, and that healing actually really is possible. Even though it might look like that's not the case. You can imagine if somebody's laying on a mat for 38 years, the muscle is gone, right? There's so many, the ligaments and the tendons and all kinds of things physiologically. It probably looked like there was no humanly way possible this person could actually ever stand up and walk again. And on the spot, they were healed and they were able to get up. And again, part of that has to do with his belief. He simply believed in what Jesus told him. And so with our human eyes, it can be very easy to not do that. To say, you know what, God, you don't get it, right? This has been going on for so long, and the people in my life, they're not going to change, and I need X amount of money to make this happen, and all these different things, and we just don't believe. But the first thing we've got to do is simply believe, no matter how long this has been going on, No matter how dire it seems, no matter how trying the situation, it is possible. Healing is possible. Recovery is possible. I have seen folks who have had situations on this world that would just look like there's no way that they can do better. There's no way that they can heal. That's what human eyes would say. But those folks have gone on to heal and to be just recovered and restored, and not because of me, because of God's power in their lives, because of their faith and their commitment to Him. But it is definitely possible. We have to start with believing, because if we don't believe things are going to get better, if we don't believe anything else can come of our situations, then we're kind of losing right out of the gate. Okay, so the first thing is to simply believe. The second thing that we want to do is we want to stand up. Right? So Jesus told him, pick up your bedroll and start walking. So if he was laying down, that means in order to walk, the first thing he had to do was stand up. So stand up. So when we think about this in terms of our own healing and our own lives, standing up, what standing up does is actually allows you to get a different perspective, right? So I'm sure that this man laying on a mat for 38 years, his perspective was maybe a few inches high, right? What he could see kind of in the distance, maybe a few feet. But standing up, let's even just pretend he was 6 feet tall. Can you imagine the difference in that perspective? Being able to say, hey, wait a minute, right? There's a tree over there that looks like that, and there's a shop down there, and there's all these different things that were happening all around me, right? The stuff that was happening when he was laying on that floor, it was happening when he stood up, right? It's the same stuff, but he couldn't see it. He didn't know, because his perspective was down here in his situation instead of a new perspective, right? A fuller perspective, standing up. So the first thing we have to do is stand up, right? Gain a different perspective and honestly get a little bit of distance from our circumstances. Right? If we're depressed or if we're feeling anxious or whatever the case may be, and we're just laying there in the thick of that and we're just stewing in it and sitting there, it's going to be very hard to even begin to fathom recovery, right? Until we're able to stand up and get a different perspective and say, you know what, this can actually be a chapter of my story, but not the whole book, right? Or this pain that I'm going through, this change that I'm going through, this process that's being developed in me, it's just that, right? It's preparing me to walk into something greater. It's going to strengthen me in ways, give me new resiliency. It's going to do something in my life to continue to catapult me forward. That's a different perspective. The pain is still there, but on one hand, it's the pain is here and this is all it's ever going to be, and I just got to kind of sit in it, versus the pain is here. It's going to be able to do a work in me. Once I move through this, right, with the help of God, I'm going to be a different person for it, right? I'll have a different testimony. I'll have a different love for Him. Life will look different. So standing up gives us a different perspective, a fuller perspective of our lives and what it can be. And hopefully, when you look back at that mat or that space that you were sitting in, it gives you the perspective to realize, I'm not trying to go back there. That's not it for me, right? I see all of this stuff around me. That right there, that's not where I want to be. And how powerful it is to finally get to the place where we're like, where I'm sitting in right now, what this is not where I want to end, right? This is not where I want to stay. So standing up allows us to get that perspective, right? And then logically, the next thing is to step forward, to take a step. So the man was told to get up and walk, and he did just that. And so a lot of times what we forget is Jesus, God, they will give us the skills that we need. They'll give us the healing that we're asking for. They'll give us all of these different gifts. They'll say, here you go. Now take it, my son. Take it, my daughter. Put some feet on that thing and walk that thing out, right? Start moving it forward. How often it is that we have the gifts and the abilities and the resources that God has promised us, and we're kind of sitting on them, right? Because it's not easy, because it doesn't feel good, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to heal, and healing hurts. Healing hurts quite a bit, right? And so it's not an easy thing to do, to start to say, not only do I want healing, not only do I want to feel better, I am also going to walk this thing out. I'm also going to take the skills that I've learned. I'm going to take the instructions that I've gotten from the scriptures. I'm going to take the strength that God gave me today, the ability to wake up. That's a gift God gave me today. I'm going to take these things and I'm going to start putting one foot in front of the other. I'm going to go. I'm going to move. I am going to walk into this recovery. That is a hard thing to do because it hurts and it's not easy. But that is what the man did. He didn't just simply say, okay, God, thanks for healing me. I'm just going to kind of, I got my mat now and I'm just going to kind of leisurely lay here, right? He did not do that. So we want to make sure that we don't do that either, okay? And then the last step, the last of these steps that we've come to is the idea of staying awake, right? Or some folks will say stay woke, however you want to put it. Staying aware, staying awake, staying woke, okay? But we got to stay alert. We got to stay aware. So in verse 14, Jesus said, you look wonderful. You're well. Don't return to a sinning life or something worse might happen. Okay, so in this, Jesus was saying, you have gotten what you asked for. You've gotten your healing. You've gotten your restoration. Now, the important thing is to keep moving forward, right? Don't go back to your old ways. Don't go back to your old ways of being. And when we're thinking about this from a recovery mindset, we have to be mindful that healing is hard. It's hard work. Recovery is hard work. It's not something that happens to us. It's something that we are actively doing, right? To move ourselves forward day in and day out, and how easy it is to slip back into those old ways of thinking, those old behaviors. Well, I'm just gonna have a little bit to drink, right? Even if you know that you've been struggling with an alcohol addiction. Or, well, I know that going for a walk every day and getting some fresh sunlight and getting some movement in my bones, I know that helps with these feelings of depression, but I'm just gonna kind of stay in and Netflix and eat my Oreos, okay? Or I know that, sometimes my mind gets too active and I get anxious when I am, kind of idle, but I know I could be reading a book or going for a walk or checking in with friends and loved ones, but instead, since I'm starting to feel kind of anxious, I'm just gonna kind of close myself off in the room and let my mind do what it's doing, right? It's easy to take those small steps back, and before we know it, we've ended up right back where we were, and sometimes even worse. And sometimes the worst comes from, well, see, I tried and look how things ended up anyway. When really it's like, no, you tried and you were moving forward. You had a little bit of a slip back, right? That doesn't mean all your hard work is pointless. It means you had a little bit of a slip back, right? And now you can keep moving forward. But our mind will play tricks on us in that way. Or we'll say, well, see, here I've done it again. I've relapsed again. I'm drinking again. And now my family is upset with me, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes when we let ourselves inch back, slowly but surely, it puts us in a tricky space, because now not only have we, in our eyes, had a misstep, but we also sometimes will use that misstep to shame and blame ourselves, right? So I want to be very, very mindful of that. So in reading these verses today, those are some of the steps that I picked up and that I picked out. Those are some of the things that I have seen time and time again to be 100% accurate, whether coming from a purely psychological point of view, psychology and coaching, or coming from a fully spiritual point of view. It holds true no matter what. If you want to start this healing journey, the first thing you got to do is simply believe, right? The second thing you've got to do is take a stand so that you can get a different perspective. The next thing you got to do is step forward, right? Keep moving forward, keep pressing towards your goal. And then the last thing you got to do is stay woke, right? Stay awake, stay aware, stay woke. Be mindful of the ways that you might slip back. Attend to those things and hopefully minimize the impact if you are human, right? Because we all are and we slip a little. Notice that and keep right on going, okay? So as always, y'all, I'm so happy to have this time to talk with you. I am here if you need me. You can definitely take a look at all my links. I'll link them down below like I always do, but you can feel free to hop on my calendar. We can do some coaching together. You can also hop on and we can pray together if that is something that you need. That's of course free, so just hop on my calendar whenever you'd like, and we can pray. And then of course I do have a workbook as well if you know that you're wanting to keep moving forward, but you find yourself struggling with the steps of how to get started. It's very practical, very straightforward. It's called Rise and Thrive. So it's really designed for folks who are trying to get up out of that rut that they found themselves in and move forward in their journey. So I am around. As always, you have got this because God's got you. And if you need me, don't hesitate to reach out. I look forward to hearing from you, y'all, and I will talk to you soon.